All right, let's test this out. How is it doing right now? We're a little on the loud side. Let's back it up. Back it off ever so slightly if we can. I think that's good. Yeah, okay. Oh, 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 oh. Okay, I'm going to stop. Today is Saturday, January 18th. It is 2:58 p.m. This is my 29th recording vocal exercise session, although technically it's my 30th. I did another one earlier this week. I do not know what went wrong, but both the OBS video file and the Adobe Audition WAV file refused to open on my computer. That might be a computer issue, and if it is, I'll find out at the end of this recording session. But here we are. I don't have a lot of time. Husband is out of the house picking up youngest child, so this is a quiet moment opportunity. There's probably going to be a lot of traffic going by during this recording session because it's middle of the day on a Saturday. But, we do what we have to do, right? And I'm capturing the conditions that I currently exist in. So we're going to pick up with the QEQRs and go right into the tongue twisters. And then I am going to maybe read for the first time for this video, but it is a rereading of Chapter 3 of Agatha Christie's The Man in the Brown Suit. Perhaps it is for the best that my last reading session didn't get captured successfully because it was not a particularly good reading. All right, here we go. QEQR, 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 QEQR. I keep checking texts that are coming in on my watch. I didn't really talk about what's going on in life. I should record that. I got the chips in my front teeth fixed, which I'm very excited about, to see what, if any, effect that has on the sibilance of my readings. Kind of a stressful long weekend here. Our hot water heater broke. And it looks like we're going to have to replace it. So a little stress that I'm working on there. What else is going on? Well, as I reach the end of this DIY project, I'm like, well, okay, how do I keep moving forward? How do I keep progressing in my education, learning about the industry, improving my skills? I've joined a bunch of Facebook groups. That has been interesting, and through them, I've discovered some additional online resources. Just today, actually, I signed up for a 7-day free trial at Skills Hub, and I guess I will drop a link for that in the description so that if anyone ever finds these videos, it's so ridiculous for me to even think about that. If anybody finds and watches these videos, that link will exist for them to click on and hop over to Skills Hub and check them out. I'm checking them out. Like I said, I just signed up for a free trial today, so I have no idea if they're good or not. I'm getting a good vibe from them, though, and it was created and is affiliated with Jennifer Hale, who is a giant in the voiceover industry, so in that way it's got some street cred. We'll see. Okay, but my time is limited for this recording session, so let's get to it. Again, I'm on the By Fei Li C414. This pop filter, I don't think it works very well, but I'm leaving it up for now. My interface is the Focusrite Scarlett Solo. Doesn't work very well, at least with this mic. All right, here we go with the tongue twisters. To work on my D sounds. Down the deep, dank, dark, dank den. Down the deep, damp, dark, dank den. Down the deep, damp, dark, dank den. Down the deep, dank, dark, dank den. Down the deep, damp, dark, dank den. Down the deep, deep, damp, dark, dank den. Down the 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 deep, damp, dark, dank den. Oh, I'm having a lot of trouble with it today. Down the deep, damp, dark, dank den. How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? To work on my F sounds. 4 furious friends fought for the phone. 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 4 furious friends. 4 furious friends fought for the phone. To work on my J sounds. And I've been using this to practice my breathing. I will admit I'm a little dehydrated today. I have not been drinking a lot of water, and on the weekends I tend to drink too much coffee, especially today, given the stress of the water heater issue. Okay, here we go. James just jostled Jean gently. 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 Oh, 11. And I bumped the mic. That wasn't good. Okay. I'm going to keep my hands out of the camera this time. Breath control. James just jostled Jean gently. 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 10. I really don't think my breath control is improving at all, and yet, as I say that, I really don't actually know what I'm even talking about. To work on my S sounds, and this is where we'll hear what, if any, changes to my sibilance has happened since I fixed the chips in my teeth. Moses supposes his toes are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toes are posies of roses as Moses supposes his toes to be. Moses supposes his toes are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toes are posies of roses as Moses supposes his toes to be. Moving right along to work on my R sounds. If you must cross a course-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the cross-course cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a coarse cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. Attention shoppers, if you must cross a coarse cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a coarse cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the coarse cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. I'd play with these a little bit more, but I really do have limited time, and I want to get in a non-rushed reading. To improve differentiation between different sounding words. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better, so Betty bought a better bit of butter. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better, so Betty bought a better bit of butter. One more time. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better, so Betty bought a better bit of butter. Not great. I feel like I'm having trouble crisply enunciating today. But practice makes perfect, and this is practice, and that is what counts. I just feel like I needed a little bit more guidance in how to practice, which is why I signed up for the 7-day trial for Skills Hub. All right. So we're moving into the main event of this reading practice, this vocal practice, which is the reading. I am going to really focus on pacing today. And trying to stay loose and not tense up. The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie, Chapter 3. In the succeeding weeks, I was a good deal bored. Mrs. Fleming and her friends seemed to me to be supremely uninteresting. They talked for hours about themselves and their children, and all of the difficulties of getting good milk for the children, and of what they say to the dairy when the milk wasn't good. Then they would go on to the servants, and the difficulties of getting good servants, and of what they had said to the woman at the registry office, and of what the woman at the registry office had said to them. They never seemed to read the papers, or to care about what went on in the world. They never seemed to read the papers or to care about what went on in the world. They disliked traveling. Everything was so different to England. The Riviera was all right, of course, because one met all one's friends there. I listened and contained myself with difficulty. Most of these women were rich. The whole wide, beautiful world was theirs to wander in, and they deliberately stayed in dirty, dull London and talked about milkmen and servants. I think now, looking back, that I was perhaps a shade intolerant. But they were stupid. Stupid even at their chosen job. Most of them kept the most extraordinarily inadequate and muddled housekeeping accounts. My affairs did not progress very fast. The house and furniture had been sold, and the amount realized had just covered our debts. As yet, I have not been successful in finding a post. Not that I really wanted one. I had the firm conviction that if I went about looking for adventure, adventure would meet me halfway. It is a theory of mine that one always gets what one wants. My theory was about to be proved in practice. It was early in January, the 8th to be exact. I was returning from an unsuccessful interview with a lady who said she wanted a secretary companion, but really seemed to require a strong charwoman who would work 12 hours a day for £25 a year. I was returning from an unsuccessful interview with a lady who said she wanted a secretary companion, but really seemed to require a strong charwoman who would work 12 hours a day for £25 a year. Having parted with mutually veiled impoliteness, I walked down Edgware Road. The interview had taken place in a house in St. John's Wood, and across Hyde Park to St. George's Hospital. There I entered Hyde Park Corner Tube Station and took a ticket to Gloucester Road. Once on the platform, I walked to the extreme end of it. My inquiring mind wished to satisfy itself as to whether there really were points and an opening between the two tunnels just beyond the station in the direction of Down Street. I was foolishly pleased to find I was right. There were not many people on the platform, and at the extreme end there was only myself and one man. As I passed him, I sniffed dubiously. If there is one smell I cannot bear, it is that of mothballs. This man's heavy overcoat simply reeked of them. And yet most men begin to wear their winter overcoats before January, and consequently by this time the smell ought to have worn off. The man was beyond me, standing close to the edge of the tunnel. He seemed lost in thought, and I was able to stare at him without rudeness. He was a small, thin man, very brown of face, with blue light eyes, and a small dark beard. Just come from abroad, I deduced. That's why his overcoat smells so. He's from India. Not an officer, or he wouldn't have a beard. Perhaps a tea planter. At this moment the man turned as though to retrace his steps along the platform. He glanced at me, and then his eyes went on to something behind me, and his face changed. It was distorted by fear, almost panic. He took a step backwards as though involuntarily recoiling from some danger, forgetting that he was standing on the extreme edge of the platform, and went down and over. There was a vivid flash from the rails, and a crackling sound. I shrieked. People came running. 2 station officials seemed to materialize from nowhere and took command. I remained where I was, rooted to the spot by a sort of horrible fascination. Part of me was appalled at the sudden disaster, and another part of me was coolly and dispassionately interested in the methods employed for lifting the man off the rail and back onto the platform. "Let me pass, please. I am a medical man." A tall man with a brown beard pressed past me and bent over the motionless body. As he examined it, a curious sense of unreality seemed to possess me. The thing wasn't real, couldn't be. Finally, the doctor stood upright and shook his head. "Dead as a doornail. Nothing to be done." We were all crowded nearer, and an aggrieved porter raised his voice. "Now then, stand back there, will you? What's the point of crowding around?" A sudden nausea seized me, and I turned blindly and ran up the stairs again. Towards the lift. I felt that it was too horrible. I must get out into the open air. The doctor who had examined the body was just ahead of me. The lift was just about to go up, another having descended, and he broke into a run. As he did so, he dropped a piece of paper. I stopped, picked it up, and ran after him, but the lift gates clanged in my face, and I was left holding the paper in my hand. By the time the second lift reached street level, there was no sign of my quarry. I hoped it was nothing important he had lost, and for the first time I examined it. It was a plain half-sheet of notepaper, with some figures and words scrawled upon it in pencil. This is a facsimile of it. On the face of it, it certainly did not appear to be of any importance. Still, I hesitated to throw it away. As I stood there holding it, I involuntarily wrinkled my nose in displeasure. Mothballs again. I held the paper gingerly to my nose. Yes, it smelled strongly of them. But then I folded up the paper carefully and put it in my bag. I walked home slowly and did a good deal of thinking. I explained to Mrs. Fleming that I had witnessed a nasty accident in the tube and that I was rather upset and would go to my room and lie down. The kind woman insisted on having a cup of tea. After that, I was left to my own devices, and I proceeded to carry out a plan I had formed coming home. I wanted to know what it was that had produced that curious feeling of unreality whilst I was watching the doctor examine the body. First, I lay down on the floor in the attitude of the corpse. Then I laid a bolster down in my stead, and proceeded to duplicate, so far as I could remember, every motion and gesture of the doctor. When I had finished, I had got what I wanted. I sat back on my heels and frowned at the opposite walls. There was a brief notice in the evening papers that a man had been killed in the tube, and a doubt was expressed whether it was suicide or accident. That seemed to me to make my duty clear, and when Mr. Fleming heard my story, he quite agreed with me. "Undoubtedly you will be wanted at the inquest. You say no one else was near enough to see what happened?" "I had the feeling that someone was coming up behind me, but I can't be sure. And anyway, they wouldn't be as near as I was." The inquest was held. Mr. Fleming made all the arrangements and took me there with him. He seemed to fear that it would be a great ordeal for me, and I had to conceal from him my complete composure. The deceased had been identified as L.B. Carton. Nothing had been found in his pockets except a house agent's order to view a house on the river near Marlow. It was in the name of L.B. Carton, Russell Hotel. The bureau clerk from the hotel identified the man as having arrived the day before and booked a room under that name. He had registered as L.B. Carton, Kimberley, South Africa. He had evidently come straight off the steamer. I was the only person who had seen anything of the affair. "You think it was an accident?" the coroner asked me. "I am positive about it. Something alarmed him, and he stepped backwards blindly without thinking what he was doing." "But what could have alarmed him?" "That I don't know, but there was something. He looked panic-stricken." A stolid juryman suggested that some men were terrified of cats. The man might have seen a cat. I didn't think his suggestion a very brilliant one, but it seemed to pass muster with the jury, who were obviously impatient to get home and only too pleased at being able to give a verdict of accident as opposed to suicide. "It is extraordinary to me," said the coroner, "that the doctor who first examined the body has not come forward. His name and address should have been taken at the time. It was most irregular not to do so." I smiled to myself. I had my own theory in regard to the doctor. In pursuance of it, I was determined to make a call upon Scotland Yard at an early date. But the next morning brought a surprise. The Flemings took in the daily budget, and the daily budget was having a day after its own heart. "Extraordinary sequel to tube accident. Woman found strangled in lonely house." I read eagerly. "A sensational discovery was made yesterday at the Mill House, Marlow. The Mill House, which is the property of Sir Eustace Pedlar, M.P., is to be let unfurnished, and an order to view this property was found in the pocket of the man who was at first thought to have committed suicide by throwing himself on the live rail at Hyde Park Corner Tube Station. In an upper room of the Mill House, the body of a beautiful young woman was discovered yesterday, strangled. She is thought to be a foreigner, but so far has not been identified. The police are reported to have a clue. Sir Eustace Pedlar, the owner of the Mill House, is wintering on the Riviera." That was Chapter 3 of The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. All right. I think that reading session went well. It definitely went better than last time. Definitely. I can say that. But I will have to listen back on it and make some notes. Hopefully this file will allow itself to be opened this time. All right, so 29. If all goes well, I've got one recording left for this project, and then I'm done. And then I have to reassess and figure out what I do next. It's kind of exciting.